When news broke that Robert Redford had passed away at the age of 89, the world of Hollywood fell into deep sorrow. For over 6 decades, Redford was more than just an actor. He was a symbol of timeless charm, quiet strength, and golden age storytelling. Fans who grew up watching his iconic films felt as though a part of their own past had vanished. But amid all the tributes and public grief, one voice was missing: Barbra Streisand's. The woman whose on-screen chemistry with Redford became the heartbeat of the legendary film The Way We Were remained completely silent. Her quietness made headlines. People wondered what she was thinking, what memories she might be reliving, and whether their bond had been deeper than anyone ever knew. Then, days later, her silence finally broke. Her words, gentle, emotional, and filled with admiration, revealed not only her affection for Redford, but also the lasting respect and love that had lived between them for half a century. For fans around the world, Streisand's tribute felt like the closing lines of a real-life love story that began on the silver screen. Robert Redford was born on August 18, 1936, in Santa Monica, California. From a young age, he showed an artistic spark and a love for adventure. His mother, Martha, believed in him deeply and encouraged his creative side. But her sudden death when he was just 18 left a lasting wound in his heart. That loss shaped much of who he became: quiet, thoughtful, and deeply sensitive beneath his calm exterior. Redford's early years weren't easy. He faced challenges at school and even lost a college scholarship because of drinking and carelessness. But instead of giving up, he turned his pain into purpose. He traveled through Europe, painted, and discovered his passion for storytelling. When he returned to the U.S., he studied acting in New York and slowly built his career on Broadway. By the late 1950s, he was earning recognition for his stage work. In the 1960s, television roles in Perry Mason, The Twilight Zone, and Maverick gave him exposure, but it was his performance in Barefoot in the Park that made Hollywood finally take notice. From there, Redford's rise was unstoppable. The 1960s and 70s turned Robert Redford into one of the most admired stars in American film history. He wasn't just a handsome face. He was an actor who brought honesty and depth to every role. His partnership with Paul Newman in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in 1969 made him a superstar. Then came Jeremiah Johnson, The Sting, and The Unforgettable, The Great Gatsby. Each performance showed a new side of him: the rebel, the thinker, the lover. But it was The Way We Were, released in 1973, that captured something truly magical. Opposite Barbra Streisand, Redford created a love story that felt heartbreakingly real. The film told the story of two people from completely different worlds: Katie, a passionate political activist, and Hubble, a charming writer who wanted peace over chaos. Their relationship was beautiful, yet doomed. Just like many real-life loves that burn too bright to last, audiences were captivated, and the movie became one of the most beloved romances in film history. What made it even more powerful was the chemistry between Redford and Streisand. It felt genuine, raw, and unforgettable. So much so that many people believed there had to be something real behind the camera. Rumors about a real-life connection between Redford and Streisand spread almost immediately after the film's release. Their chemistry was too perfect, their glances too sincere. Hollywood insiders whispered about an off-screen relationship that mirrored their on-screen love. But both stars denied any romance, insisting their connection was purely professional. Still, fans refused to believe that. Streisand often spoke about how difficult it had been to convince Redford to join the movie in the first place. He had turned the role down several times, saying that the character, Hubble, was too shallow. He didn't want to play a man who was only there to support the female lead. Streisand and director Sidney Pollack worked hard to rewrite the character, giving him more emotional weight, and eventually, Redford agreed. In hindsight, that decision changed both of their lives. The way they worked together on set showed mutual admiration and respect. Streisand later admitted she was infatuated with Redford during filming, and biographers suggested he kept a professional distance to protect their working relationship. Yet, that tension, that mix of admiration and restraint, was what made their on-screen romance unforgettable. For all his fame and charm, Robert Redford's personal life was filled with both love and pain. In 1958, long before his Hollywood stardom, he married historian Lola Van Watt. Their love story began before fame, and together they had 4 children. But tragedy struck early when their first baby, Scott, died shortly after birth. Redford carried that grief with him for the rest of his life. Despite the pain, he and Lola built a family. But as his fame grew, their marriage began to suffer. After nearly 3 decades together, they quietly divorced in 1985. Still, they remained on good terms, and she continued to influence his life. Her Utah roots even inspired him to create the Sundance Institute and the Sundance Film Festival, which later became a symbol of independent film. Redford eventually found love again with German artist Sibylle Chagers, whom he married in 2009. Their partnership was built on art, nature, and shared values. She brought him peace in his later years, especially after the heartbreaking death of his son James in 2020. Despite these personal losses, Redford remained active in filmmaking and environmental causes until his final years. earning respect as much for his humanity as for his art. Robert Redford's charisma made him one of Hollywood's most admired leading men, yet his relationships with his co-stars were often complex. Jane Fonda, who worked with him on 5 films, once said she was always in love with him but that he didn't like to kiss and could be moody. Still, she admired his talent and kindness, calling him a very good person despite his emotional distance. Meryl Streep, who starred with Redford in Out of Africa, admitted to having a crush on him. She described one scene when he washed her hair by the river as one of the most intimate moments she'd ever filmed. Other actresses like Michelle Pfeiffer and Demi Moore also spoke of his charm and gentleness, but none of them shared the same kind of magic that existed between Redford and Streisand. Their partnership in The Way We Were stood apart because it felt emotionally real. Even though they never had a romantic relationship, they shared something deeper, an understanding that transcended acting. Streisand herself once said that working with Redford was like watching art come to life. When Robert Redford died, the world turned its eyes to Barbra Streisand. Their connection had become part of Hollywood history, and people waited for her reaction. For days, she said nothing, and that silence felt heavier than any words. Fans speculated that her grief ran too deep, that perhaps there was more between them than either had ever admitted. Then finally, she broke her silence on Instagram. Her tribute was simple but deeply moving. She wrote that every day on the set of The Way We Were had been exciting, intense, and pure joy. She called Redford charismatic, intelligent, and one of the finest actors ever. What touched fans most was how she described their differences. He loved the outdoors. While she was a city girl who joked she was allergic to horses. Despite that, they got along beautifully. Streisand also shared a personal story about their last meeting, a quiet lunch where they talked not about fame or films, but about art. They promised to exchange drawings, a small gesture that spoke volumes about their lasting friendship. Her words painted a picture of deep respect and quiet affection, a love that never needed to be spoken aloud. For over 50 years, The Way We Were has remained one of the most beloved love stories in film. Its theme song, sung by Streisand herself, still brings tears to people's eyes. Every time audiences rewatch it, they see something new, not just a movie, but a reflection of life's bittersweet truth. Sometimes, love doesn't last forever, but it leaves an impression that time can't erase. That was the beauty of Katie and Hubble, and in many ways, it was the beauty of Barbra and Robert too. They represented two worlds, passion and calm, city and countryside, realism and romance. Their story wasn't about perfection, but about connection, the kind that lingers even after goodbye. Streisand's words, after his death, reminded fans that their bond was not a myth or a rumor, but something real and human. As she said, "He was one of a kind, and I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to work with him." Those words became a final curtain call, not just for Redford's extraordinary life, but for one of the most touching friendships Hollywood has ever seen. Their story reminds us that sometimes, the greatest love stories don't end when the camera stops rolling. They live on in memory, in music, and in the hearts of everyone who still believes in love that lasts a lifetime. Robert Redford's passing marked the end of an era of classic storytelling, genuine artistry, and authenticity. He wasn't just an actor. He was a visionary who helped redefine American cinema through his roles and his passion for independent filmmaking. For many comedians, Saturday Night Live was both a dream come true and a test of endurance. The show offered fame and recognition, but it also demanded endless hard work, long nights, and constant creativity. Each week was a new challenge, a new script, new sketches, and new pressure to make America laugh again. Some stars could handle the grind for years, while others reached a point where they knew they had to move on. Many said that SNL gave them everything they needed to grow, but staying too long could trap them in a never-ending loop of exhaustion and repetition. For some, leaving wasn't about failure, it was about survival and self-discovery. Take Eddie Murphy, for example. By the time he left SNL in 1984, he was already a superstar. His work on the show had made him one of the most recognizable comedians in the world. But Hollywood came calling with bigger opportunities. Movies like Beverly Hills Cop and Trading Places turned him into a global icon. For Eddie, SNL was the launchpad, not the destination. Yet, even years later, he spoke about how hard it was to leave the show that made him famous. He knew that no matter how big he got, a part of him would always belong to that chaotic, creative studio in New York City where it all began. While viewers saw laughter on screen, behind the scenes was often chaos and emotional strain. The pressure to be funny week after week wore many performers down. SNL cast members often described their time there as both the best and worst years of their lives. Some compared it to running a marathon every week without rest. Rehearsals lasted deep into the night. Rewrites happened hours before live broadcasts. And criticism from producers, writers, and even other cast members could be brutal. Bill Hader once opened up about his anxiety during his later seasons on the show. Though audiences adored his characters like Stefan and Vinny Vedecci, the stress behind the scenes was intense. He struggled with panic attacks and self-doubt despite his success. Eventually, Hader realized he needed a healthier lifestyle and more control over his creative work. Leaving SNL wasn't about turning his back on comedy, it was about taking care of himself. After departing, he went on to create Barry, proving that his talent extended far beyond sketch comedy. Saturday Night Live has always been a melting pot of ideas. But with that much creativity in one place, clashes were inevitable. Writers, producers, and performers didn't always agree on what was funny or appropriate. Some sketches were killed minutes before airtime. Others went live even when performers thought they weren't ready. The competitive environment could push people to their limits. One well-known case is Chevy Chase, who was one of the show's earliest breakout stars. After only one season, Chase left the show in 1976, shocking both fans and fellow cast members. Rumors of tension between him and other castmates, especially Bill Murray, filled tabloids for years. Chevy's sharp humor and ego reportedly rubbed some people the wrong way. But from his perspective, the show had served its purpose. It launched his film career, and he was ready to move on. His departure set a pattern for future stars. Make your mark on SNL, then conquer Hollywood. Years later, Adam Sandler faced a similar situation. He had a strong fan following, and his unique brand of comedy, silly, musical, and heartfelt gave the show some of its most memorable moments in the early 90s. But in 1995, Sandler was unexpectedly fired. To this day, the exact reason remains unclear. Some say it was creative differences with producer Lorne Michaels. Others believe the network wanted a new direction. Whatever the truth, Sandler turned the setback into motivation. His movie career exploded soon after, with hits like Happy Gilmore and The Waterboy. Decades later, Sandler returned to host SNL and even joked about his firing in his monologue, showing there were no hard feelings, only gratitude and humor. As time went on, many stars found themselves facing a strange problem. They had simply become too big for SNL. Once you were recognized everywhere, it became harder to disappear into different characters each week. The audience saw the celebrity instead of the sketch. Kristen Wiig faced that challenge. Her characters, like Target Lady and Gilly, were cultural touchstones. But after 7 years, Wiig knew she had given all she could. During her emotional farewell, in 2012, Mick Jagger and her fellow castmates joined her on stage for a musical goodbye. She later said she left not because she was unhappy, but because it was time to grow and try new roles. Will Ferrell faced a similar moment in 2002. His comedic energy had carried the show through the late 90s, and his performances as George W. Bush and other eccentric characters had made him a legend. But Ferrell admitted that even though he loved SNL, he didn't want to overstay his welcome. He saw that audiences were ready to see him in a new light. His move to Hollywood led to classics like Anchorman, Elf, and Step Brothers. For Ferrell, leaving wasn't an end, it was a graduation. The SNL of today is very different from the one that launched in 1975. Social media, online clips, and digital sketches have changed the way audiences consume comedy. For younger cast members, viral fame often arrives faster and disappears faster, too. Pete Davidson is a modern example of how fame can both help and hurt. His personal life became tabloid news, overshadowing his work on the show. Davidson often said he felt out of place among older, more experienced comedians. His humor was more raw and personal, often based on real-life struggles with mental health and relationships. After 8 seasons, he decided to step away, explaining that he had outgrown the format. Davidson's honesty and vulnerability made him one of the most relatable figures in SNL history, even after his exit. Similarly, Kate McKinnon, one of the most beloved modern-era cast members, left the show in 2022. Her impressions and original characters were brilliant, but after a decade, she felt emotionally drained. In interviews, McKinnon admitted that leaving was incredibly hard, but necessary. The weekly grind had taken its toll, and she wanted to explore acting in new ways. Her departure marked the end of an era, and many fans still say the show hasn't been quite the same without her. For all its success, SNL has also faced criticism for its culture. Former cast members have spoken about the intense hierarchy and the challenge of getting screen time. Newcomers often struggled to get noticed in a cast filled with established stars. Some, like Jenny Slate, left after only 1 season, feeling like they never truly got a chance to shine. Others, like Chris Rock, said they loved the experience but felt creatively limited. Rock described his time on the show as like being at Harvard, a place to learn, but not a place to stay forever. He used what he learned to build a career that would make him one of the greatest comedians of all time. Even SNL's creator, Lorne Michaels, has acknowledged that not everyone is meant to stay forever. He once said, "The show doesn't stop for anyone. People come and go, but SNL keeps moving." That statement captures the